Hey, welcome to Coding Demos. In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to use floating action button. So a floating action button is basically used for promoted action. It is used for a promoted action. So you might be asking me like what are the type of actions that a floating action button can do. So in terms of the actions, a floating action button should make positive action or should be used for positive action. So those type of positive actions can be, for example, like what is shown here is, let's say you want to add a new post, or you want to add a new comment, or maybe you want to uh, rate something, like for example you want to rate an item inside a list, or you want to navigate from one point to another. Then those kind of actions are called positive actions. Now there are other actions which are the destructive action, the minor and destructive actions, and those actions like what are listed here as, for example, archive or trash. So you don't, so the what is this is you don't the your float action button should not perform these type of actions. For example, trash, deleting items, or you want to control the volume of your phone or your media player, or showing a notification, the notification badge on top of the floating action button, these kind of stuff. Alright, so let me open up the emulator and show you the app that we will build in this tutorial. So here I have a floating action button with a call icon. So when I click on the floating action button, I'll make a call to a number. So you see I'm being directed to the phone app to make the call to this number. That's basically it. So when you click back, then you'll be directed as usual to the app itself. So let's open up Android Studio and start coding. So I'm gonna name this as floating action button example, and I'm gonna click on next. So you can see here now Android Studio is asking me which type of screen that I need to start my project with. So there's the basic activity. So the basic activity, it is provided with the floating action button and a toolbar, but for our case I need to show you guys the step-by-step on how to create the floating action button, and I need to walk you through the full process. So I'm going to start with the empty activity. So I'm going to select that, I'm going to click on next and click on finish and wait for it to build up. Okay, build is complete. Now the first thing we need to do is we need to go to the activity underscore main, and then let's remove this text view, and then I'm going to look for the floating action button. It is located under the custom design section. So here you can see that these views, and then next to them is some sort of a download button. The reason why it's showing the download button is because I haven't yet added the Gradle build for the design support library. That's why it's showing you the download. So you can download each one of them separately, or you can download one as a package. So for now I'm going to just use the floating action button. So when you click on it, Android Studio will prompt you with this dialog, say that would you like to add this library, the design support library. So I see this operation requires the library design. So I need the library, so I'm going to click on OK. And this what we'll do is it's going to add the library inside the build.gradle module app, and it's going to sync the project so that I can use the floating action button. Now the sync is complete. To make sure that it is successfully added inside the build.gradle module app, so I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to scroll down, and there you can see it's compile the support design library. Okay, so now we've added the library. Next thing we need to do is we need to add a coordinator layout. Now you can actually use a floating action button with with relative layout or linear layout, but is actually prefer to use a coordinated layout. So for this example, I'm going to go with the coordinated layout. So you can see it's actually part of the custom design section. So I'm just going to drag that inside the screen here. Okay. Now by default the root layout is relative, so I'm going to change that. So let me just copy this. Okay, let me just copy that. I'm going to replace it with the relative layout right here. I'm going to delete this. I don't need that anymore. And I'm going to change the closing tag with coordinate layout. Next is I'm going to remove the padding which was provided with the relative layout, and then I'm going to add the floating action button. So if we go back to design, then this is the layout that you see. Now let me just build the project, because it's a rendering problem, so I'm going to build the project and see what happened. Okay, build is complete, and that's why you don't see the rendering problem anymore. That's good. So now we have the coordinate layout right here. Next we need to add the floating action button. Now before we need to add a floating action button, when we try to drag the button inside the layout here, it will ask us what is the icon that we need to use for the button. Let me show you. So when I drag it here, and the studio will ask us which icon that we need to use. Well, for now we don't have any icon. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up Chrome here, and next to I have an open tab here that is the material design icons. So right here is I'm going to look for the phone icon that I will use it for the floating action button. So I'm going to scroll down, and then I'm going to look for the call. So you see this is the call icon, and this is the icon I'm actually using it for the floating action button. So I click on that. Okay, and then now it will ask you which color that you need for the icon, as well as the size. Now for the size, I'm going to stick with 24 as it's recommended by the material design guideline. Say that for the floating action button, the icon should be of a size 24 dp. So I'm selecting 24 dp. Now you can choose the color, that's up to you. You either can choose black or white. I'm going to go with white. Now once you made your changes, you decided which color, which icon that you want, as well as the size. Next thing, to download the icon, you can just click on the PNGs, and it will straight away gets downloaded into your computer. So let me download that and add it inside the project. Okay, so I have already added the icons, the call icon. So you can see here I opened the resource, drawable, and here I have the icons. So to double check, this is what the icon looks like. So now we have the icons ready. Next we need to do is we're going to drag the floating action button inside the screen. So now it will ask us which icon that we need to use. Well, we're going to choose the phone, so I'm going to click on that, and then click on OK. And you can see that's the icon. Next thing is we need to position the icon towards the bottom right here. So we're going to go to text, and then here we're going to add a layout gravity, and we're going to say we need to position the button to the bottom, so it's bottom, and then we need to make it to the right, so we do end here. Now you might be asking why we choose end instead of right. So if we choose right, then Android Studio will recommend us to use end instead of right for, you can see, to ensure correct behavior in right to left locales. So we're going to change that to end. Okay, let me reformat the code. Great. So let's go back to design, and you can see the button is positioned just the way we want it. Next is we need to change the size. By default, the size is mini. What I mean by mini is usually floating action button have two sizes. You can see here fab, apt or fab size. So you have the mini and we have the normal. So the mini is a small, it's a small size, and that's basically used, for example, when you have a floating action button and you want to show a sub buttons. So those sub buttons should have a size of mini, and the original floating action button should have a size of normal. So in our case, we're only going to show one floating action button, and that's the main one. So we're going to change that from mini to normal. Now if we go back to design, you can see the size increased to the default size. Next thing is we need to add a margin from the right and the bottom as well, according to the material design guidelines. So to show you that, let me go back to the documentation, and if we scroll up a bit, and you can see here it says that for the interior icon, which is the icon that we've just downloaded, the size should be 24 by 24. Now we got the icon ready, and that's what we want it. Next is, it says that the floating action button should be placed 16 dp minimum from the edge on mobile and 24 minimum on tablet or desktop. So 16 for the phone. So we'll go back to this to the Android Studio, and then we're going to give a margin, and this should be Android margin right, and that is 16 dp, and we need to add margin end as well, so we change that to end. That's one. Next we need to add a margin bottom, and we're going to give that 16 dp as well. Now I just rearrange the code, go back to design, and you can see the button is positioned the way we want it. Now we have the button in the right position. Next is we need to, let me just take a final look at the code. Everything looks okay. Now we're done with the design. Let's go back to the main activity to define the button and set an on-click listener to make the call. So here inside the main activity, I'm going to initialize the floating action button. So it's floating action button. I'm going to call it mfab, and floating action button equals to floating action button, find view by ID, the usual stuff that we do to initialize a new UI view, new UI view inside the main activity. So it's r.id dot floating action button. So here is we need to set an on-click listener. So it's floating action button dot set on click listener, new on click listener. So here inside the on click listener is where we're going to start the call activity. So to start the call activity, first we need to have a test number, or let's say just an integer to indicate that we're actually trying to call a phone number. So I'm going to initialize a variable here, string variable. We're going to call it phone, and I'm going to initialize that with this number. So it's 111 111 1111. Okay, so we have the phone number ready. Next, here inside the onClick method of the floating action button, I'm going to start a new activity, start activity, and then new attempt. So inside the intent here, I'm going to do attempt dot action view, and that's the one, action underscore view. Okay, and then comma, and then I'm going to call URI, because we need to parse the phone number. So I'm going to call URI dot parse, and we're going to pass the string, which is the phone number. So here, for the phone number to work, we need to add tell, and then // and I'm going to append to it the phone number, and that is phone. So start your activity, new attempt. I'm going to pass in action view, and then for the second value I'm going to parse the telephone number by appending the telephone, and by appending the telephone with the string together inside the activity, inside the attempt. So now we have the phone number ready and the floating action button with its on-click listener. Everything looks good, so let's run the app and see how it looks like on the emulator. So I'm going to hit the run button. I have my emulator running right now, so I'm going to select the Nexus 5. I'm going to click on OK and wait for it to build. Okay, so the app is running. Now you can see we have the floating action button with the icon that we just selected. Now if you click on the button, it opens up the phone app, and here is the number that we try to call. Okay, so if you click on back, then we're going to be directed to the app itself. Now let's say if you want to customize the icon a bit. Let's say you want to change the color, or you want to change the icon itself, or you want to change its position, even though it is recommended for the button to be placed here, but sometimes you have a certain requirements that you need to fulfill, so that's up to you. So let me show you how to do that. We'll go to the activity_main. Now if you want to change the icon, you can just look at this line, the app srcCompat, and then it's going to look for the drawable. So what you're going to do is you're going to download the icons from the material design icon provided by Google. Choose the icon that you want, and then you just drag it inside your project under the resource drawable, and here you place the icons that you need to use, and you can just reference that inside this line. Now if let's say you want to change the color of the icon, by default the button color is using the accent color. So what I mean by accent color is the one that's provided inside the values and then colors.xml. So you have the color primary dark, and color accent. So this is the color that the floating action button usually use. Now let's say if you want to change the color, what you can do here is you don't go to the colors.xml and change the color, because sometimes the color accent does not only apply to floating action button, but it applies to different views inside your app. So you don't want to cause some kind of trouble. So what you can do is you can just go to activity_main, and inside the floating action button you can call the app and then background tint, and then you're going to reference the color that you need for the floating action button. So let's say instead of color accent, I'm going to select color primary, for example. If you go back to design, I can see the color change from the accent to color primary. Now let's say if you want to change the position of the button, so you don't want it to be on the right here. Let's say you want it to be on the left. So you can change that here from the layer gravity. So it's bottom. Yes, we need the button to be at the bottom, but instead of right, we're going to change that to left. So we're going to replace left with start as it's recommended by Android Studio. Now if we go back to design, you can see the button changed its location from the right to the left. Let's say you want it to be on top, so you can just change the bottom and you make it top. If you go back to design, and there the floating action button changed its location again. If you want to run the app again, let's say we run it again and see how it looks like on the emulator. Okay, so here is how it looks like in the emulator. It's placed on top there, on top left. So that's basically it for this tutorial. If you really enjoyed this tutorial, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more of these awesome tutorials, please click on the subscribe button. Thanks again for watching, and happy coding.